I was born in a village in Nottinghamshire called Epsom, but I was involved in the church. I served, I rang the bells. During the holidays we used to do Bible studies via letter. God has always been the shepherd of my life. I can understand how people can feel so depressed about being in a position where they know they're not going to be able to understand.
Hello and welcome to another edition of My Story. Today we want to introduce you to Ken Allen, who's come over the Peak District from Derbyshire, and he's here with us today. I know him to be a man of vision and I look forward to hearing his story. Hello, Ken.
Good morning.
So tell us, where were you born?
I was born in a village in Nottinghamshire called Epsom, to a farming family. Oh. My father was a first generation farmer. He didn't want to farm, but the farm had been bought by his grandfather and for his brother, and his brother unfortunately died before he took over the farm. So my dad was brought in to run the farm. He did so by correspondence course and by the help of the local farmers. So I'm the eldest of 4 children, and we lived as a family for 16 years till my father died. And when we sold the farm, my 2 brothers are farming now. They followed it. They followed through the farming gene, but I didn't. I never wanted to farm.
So what did you want to do?
I wanted to join the forces. I wanted to join the RAF as a pilot. So at school, when anybody asked me what I wanted to do, I was going to be a pilot. And at the end of year 11, after my GCSEs or GCEs as they were then, I went down to Biggin Hill for the selection process. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, I was told that because I had a history of asthma, I couldn't be a pilot. But if it was the forces life I wanted, then I could certainly go in as an engineer. And so I went back to school. I had very little careers advice because I said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to a university, I'm going to do electrical engineering, and then I'm going to join the RAF. And so I'd almost planned out my life at that time.
Very interesting, yes. So obviously you must have gone a different route because I know you're not in the RAF.
No, I'm not. No, I never have been.
So tell us about your uni years. What happened?
My uni days. Well, as a family, my mother had a history of Christian education. So she went to a Baptist church in Nottingham and was brought up in a religious family. And my father was the one who actually took us to church every Sunday. I went to a Church of England primary school. I went to a Church of England secondary school. So I was used to having assemblies every day, singing hymns every day, praying every day. We used to have dismissal, and those things have stayed with me. And I think it's very sad that that foundation is no longer available to children of today.
Yes, I agree.
But I was involved in the church. I served. I rang the bells. I wore a cassock and a surplice. And my younger sister always called me the little white vicar. And so when I went off to university, unbeknown to me, the vicar had written to the chaplain of the university, had asked him to contact me, which he did. And at that time there was a mission within the university, and they had a visiting speaker and preacher, and he invited me down, and I went and found myself responding to the invitation and giving my heart to the Lord at that point in time. And that really was the beginning of the journey. that I made, and it was the difference between the idea of doing things to get yourself into God's good books, as opposed to accepting what Jesus did for me on the cross.
Yes. So what difference did it make to your life?
Well, I went back to the hall of residence I was living in, and it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. And there was a joy in my heart that I still remember to this day. We had Bible study and prayer groups. We went to church together. We joined with another group from a different hall. And we formed a very, I think it would be fair to say, quite a tight-knit group of Christians there.
So you could encourage each other?
We could encourage each other. And the one thing that I remember is that we paired up. There was no such thing as mobile phones in those days.
No, of course.
And so during the holidays, we used to do Bible studies via letter. And so
really?
David, who was my prayer partner, the very first book that I ever studied in depth really was Galatians, and we would study a chapter. We would write down our feelings and how what we got out of it, and then we would send it on. And somewhere in my loft, I still have those letters from David, and so that was the beginning of my journey, really.
Right. And so, going back to your career, first of all.
So I wanted to do electrical engineering, and I went off to university to do that, to Manchester. Absolute failure.
Really?
No one had given me any real instruction as to what electrical engineering contained or involved, and when I got there, I really was out of my depth completely. So I was with a group of people who obviously had spent their whole lives looking at electrical engineering, and it was just terrible. I can understand how people can feel so depressed about being in a position where they know they're not going to be able to understand.
Square peg in a round hole.
So it was, and this went on for about 10 days, and I thought, what am I going to do? As I've said before, God has always been the shepherd of my life, and I joined the hockey club, and I remember to this day we went to Chester to play Chester College, and I sat next to a guy that I didn't know, who, unbeknown to me, was also a Christian. And I said to him, I'm really struggling. And he said to me, well, I've gone through the same thing, and I have changed my course. And the very next day, I went to my tutor and said, look, this is not for me. Electrical engineering is not for me. I really need to change to what I enjoy, which was chemistry. Right. And so I changed from electrical engineering to chemistry, and that is the beginning, really, of the story. Because in my life as a teacher, I have been able to say to people, you need to choose what you enjoy and not what you think you need, because it can lead to all sorts of problems. Yes. If you're struggling, choose what you enjoy, because otherwise you end up in all sorts of knots, which I actually did.
It's interesting because, we will often say, what is my calling, God? What is my calling?
Yeah.
And usually it's something he's fitted you for by giving you the desire to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I started with chemistry.
Yeah.
And at the end of the second year at university, we decided we were going to get a house as a group of students. One of the housemates was the guy that had told me to change my course, Paul, and there were three others, and moving out of hall of residence into a house took away the support network that I had with Christians, and it's so important. I found that we need to meet together and continue to meet together.
All our lives.
All our lives.
Yes.
All our lives. because as soon as I was out of that position where I had regular contact with other Christians, it was on the slippery slope, unfortunately. And I had more in common with the non-Christians in the house than I did with the Christians.
Yes.
And so I started to go down into a wilderness time. So at the end of my degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do then, because I had no backup plan. And I applied for some research posts, which I didn't get. And so the last option open to me really was to go to teacher training college. So I applied to do that. And I was not a good student. Academically, I was not a good student. And lectures were not my cup of tea. But the first day that I went on teacher training into the school, and I did 2 school practices at that time in Oldham and Rochdale,
All right.
I knew of a truth that was what I was designed to do.
Why do you think that was?
Well, the first of all, you could influence people's lives.
Yes.
And secondly, I felt comfortable doing what I was doing, and being able to share with them and develop a relationship to encourage them.
Yeah.
And I never looked back from that moment, as far as, I knew that teaching was where I needed to be.
Lovely.
And,
What age group?
This was 11 to 16. Well, when my first job was in Bristol, once I'd realised that this was for me, I applied for the first jobs that came up. I wasn't bothered where I was, and the first job was Bristol, and that was into a 13 to 18 school, actually. I loved it then.
Yes.
And I loved it 40 years later when I retired.
That's so good.
And so, it was such a joy to be there. But during all of this time, I was away from the Lord. I didn't attend church. I didn't pray with people. I didn't study at all.
So how did you come back to the Lord?
So, 2 things were important to me at the time. One was sport, and I was playing a lot of sport, and the other was my job. And so after 2 years, I felt that I'd done enough to deserve promotion within the school I was.
Yes.
The head told me that I was 30th in line, and so I said,
Wow.
I'm leaving then, and I'm going. So I applied for promotion and got a head of chemistry back in Nottingham. And it is there that indirectly I met, well, not indirectly, directly I met my wife, Jane. And,
Lovely.
And it's also the place that I came back to the Lord. So when I moved back, I bought a small house, and I was going through some pretty tricky issues, and I got a card from a lad that I was at school with, who had been a Christian. So although I knew he was a Christian, and he was part of the Christian Union at school, I never attended a Christian Union. But he sent me a birthday card one year, and he said, if you ever want to talk, I'm available.
Lovely.
And so I contacted him, and he invited me to his church where he was attending. And so I started going back to church. And on one occasion, he wasn't there, and I went on my own, and I realised that I was attending because of him, and not because of the church itself. And I remember it was one Sunday night. I went back home, and I knelt by my bed and I prayed. I asked, Lord, where is it you want me to be? Mm-hmm. And I just left it with him. On the following Monday, we were playing hockey. We were playing a game of hockey over at in Newark, and I'd managed to co-opt one or two of the PE department from school to join us. One of whom was Jane, my wife to be. At that point in time, we weren't going out, And after the game, as we were in the bar, she came up to me and she said, I've got a request to ask you. I said, one of the teachers in school has asked me if I would mind if they took me to their home group. Now, I didn't know this teacher, and I hadn't said anything about, what I'd prayed, and you could have knocked me down with a feather. And this is why I say, all the time, God has been my shepherd.
Yes.
And I joined her home group, this home group, and ended up going to Talbot Street in Nottingham, David Sherman's church, and that is really where I recommitted my life. Jane and I and Jane's father all got baptised there. Before I got the head of science in Chesterfield, I wanted promotion from Nottingham. And within the county of Nottinghamshire, I was not successful. So I had to go outside the county. And I applied for a job in Leicester, which was acting deputy head of science, and which I got. But when I started in the, I think it was the September, the head of science had taken secondment. So actually, when I started that job, I was actually acting head of science for 1 year, supposedly.
Right. Yes.
But at the end of that 1 year, the head of science decided he wasn't coming back. So I actually took on the head of science permanently. And that I believe, that training in Leicester, I believe, was what gave me the opportunity of being the head of science in Chesterfield.
Yes.
And had I not had that opportunity, I don't think I would have got it. So, throughout my life, I can see where God's hand has shepherded me
Yes.
to the right situation, the right place.
And the right place, yes.
And the right place.
Yes.
You see, it's so interesting that the reason I didn't get pilot training was because I had asthma.
Yes.
The reason I had asthma was because my father had encouraged me to ride a horse. I'd been riding a horse. When I got to Manchester and joined a surgery there, they did some allergy tests. And the allergy test showed that I was allergic to horses. And so if I hadn't ridden horses, I don't know where I might have been. But maybe I would have still taught. But who knows? Who knows? God's hand shepherds me all my life.
That's lovely. So fast forward a little bit. During your time of teaching, you also began a church or began to pastor a church. How did that come about?
Jane and I, when we got married, we felt the Lord was calling us to Nottingham. Mm-hmm. And so we looked for a house in Nottingham, and nothing would come through. Every house that we looked at was blocked in some way. And so we sat down and we asked ourselves, is the Lord saying that really we need to be elsewhere? And Jane is from Claycross.
Oh, is she?
And so
yes.
and so we started to look in Claycross, and the first house we came to is the one we bought, and it's the one we are still in to this day. And Claycross was where Jane was fellowshipping at the time.
Yes.
And so I was going to Talbot Street in the morning, and I was going to Claycross in the evening, and then we felt that Claycross was where we should be, and so I joined the Claycross Church, and have been there since 1982, I think.
Right.
Is the length of time. Yes. So I was just a member. Of the church, and we've gone through many changes. We've gone. So I left a church of over 500, yes. And at one point we were down to 6 in Claycross. Yes. But we kept the fire burning. We joined with another AOG church from up the road in North Wingfield. They had a decent, fair-sized congregation. We had a fair-sized building. Yes. And so we joined together, and they came and joined us in the church. And as an eldership and leadership, we decided we weren't going to appoint another pastor. We were going to, as a group of 8, we were going to run the church ourselves. That's how I got into leadership, really.
Yes.
And the Lord, as again, the Lord has been my shepherd all my life.
Yes.
We appointed Matt and Esther as pastors 5 or 6 years ago.
Yes.
And
Esther's your daughter.
Esther is my daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, lovely. Now, what has God done in the church in those times?
In those times, well, as
You've
I
seen
say,
miracles, I believe, and lots of answers to prayer.
Lots of answers to prayer. We had a young couple in the church who felt a desire to pray, and so they started praying in the evenings, and out of that, one of the leaders felt that the Lord was saying, we need to open the church for prayer every day. And so for five years, we prayed every day.
Wonderful. Yes.
2 hours in the evening, and we focused on different things. So we focused, on obviously our church and the community. We focused on missions. On one night, we focused on Bible study. On another night, we run a mother and toddlers group. We had 30 of Claycross youth coming in on a regular basis, yes. And even today they still recognise and will talk to you even that long ago. So
Ken, now that you're retired, what is God doing in your life, and where do you see yourself going?
Okay, we have a grandson, so that's quite important. But Matt and Esther are moving the church forward in a new season.
Good. So
as I say, we still run the toddler group. We have a writing group in church, a sort of reminiscing group. We obviously we have the home group. One of the things that we've been doing recently over the last couple of years is a pop-up baby clothes shop for the area. So
that's interesting.
People donate baby clothes,
yes,
and then we have a morning where we give them away free, and that has been a great blessing to the community. So much so that people are coming on a regular basis, bringing baby clothes for the next one.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's a bit like recycling.
Yes,
baby clothes,
which is so good in these days, because babies don't grow out.
No,
they only grow out of clothes.
That's right. But I'm still involved in the church. I do the treasuring and so forth. A bit of preaching. But I'm as busy now as I was when I was working.
I think most people say that.
That's right. Yeah.
That's good. But, and you're feeling fulfilled in the Lord, and
school was very important to me. Being the best that I could be, so I always think that relationships with the students and showing yourself to be as efficient as you can in your job, doing what you should do, is as good a testimony as giving your own personal testimony.
Yes.
I was often asked by the RE department to go into lessons to give a Christian perspective on various things like creation and abortion and that sort of thing.
Yes.
And of course, as soon as you did that, students want to know how you can be a scientist and a Christian.
No, that's a good one. So what was your answer?
So I don't believe you can be a scientist without being a Christian. And so people got to know, and quite often students would come and ask me about what I believe, and often in lessons itself when I should have been teaching other things. So I always used to say to them, if you want to talk about this, I'm happy to talk to you, but it's got to be in your own time.
Yes,
and so forth. But the RE department were often run by atheists, so it was a good opportunity to do that.
Yes.
And So yeah, so I enjoyed that. Although I miss the students, I miss the teachers. Other things have replaced
I'm sure.
what
Yes.
I used to do.
And
yeah.
you do mark examination papers.
I do mark examination papers. Yes, I do quite a lot of marking now.
Do you? So what level?
It's usually AS level and GCSE. I mark international papers, from across the world.
Very interesting.
But it is.
Yes.
It is, and I mark two specifications. I mark environmental management, but I also mark something called global perspectives, which is an excellent specification to mark, which gives the students opportunity to discuss things that are important to them.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ken, one thing that has come out during your testimony is the importance of meeting together with other Christians, fellowshipping, encouraging one another.
Absolutely.
Do you want to talk any more about that?
I mean, it's just one thing that I think has come out of my journey, that you can't go it alone. You need people around you to support you. And the one thing that Matt and Esther have done is actually shorten our services. And in doing that, it means that there is far more time at the end of the service for the development of community.
Yes.
And so whereas before we were finding people were leaving either early or not staying for coffee and tea afterwards, we now have the majority of people staying and talking, encouraging each other.
Good.
And it's built relationships like never before, really.
Now, Ken, I know people will be watching this thinking, well, I'm not meeting together. Would you encourage them and just pray for them right now?
Absolutely. The one thing that is important is that people know that they are supported, and that is done by meeting together. And so, Father, I just ask that your Holy Spirit would touch hearts, and Father, just confirm the importance of meeting together as a community to encourage, to build up. And I just thank you, Lord God, that you put people around us that undertake for us on every side. And I just want to bless you this morning, that you are always about a good work, and you are always our shepherd, whether we realize it or not. And I just want to thank you for Jesus. In his precious name, amen.
Amen. Ken, it's been lovely to have you along. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story with us.
It's been a privilege. Thank you.